So per ESPN's Adam Schefter and others, the Vikings and Darnold are still talking maybe about a short-term deal to keep him in Minnesota. But the waters are a little muddy now. Femi, your takes, betting and otherwise, on the Vikings not slapping Sam Darnold with the franchise tag. Free agency starts next week in the NFL.
Yeah, I think this is the move that we figured would happen because the Vikings did spend resources to draft J.J. McCarthy in the top 10. They didn't have to move up a bunch, but they did move up a little bit using extra resources to draft their quote-unquote quarterback of the future. So, yeah, like Darnold was awesome for them this year, but I think as that organization saw, like in the moments where you're playing the big-time teams, is Sam Darnold good enough to actually win those games? And yeah, it's probably unfair because he was awesome. Career season, Pro Bowler, was great. Led them to a 14-3 record, but they went and lost to Detroit in embarrassing fashion, and they lost to the Rams in embarrassing fashion in both of those games, high-profile games. So the fact that they didn't franchise tag him, not surprising. What surprises me with all this news is the reporting that's out there, and it's been going on since like yesterday and early today as well. And it's been like almost like a blitzkrieg of like letting everyone know Darnold could still be in Minnesota's plans. I don't know if I buy it. I'm curious to get your thoughts because you're really good at reading all the NFL tea leaves. He's on the open market. Are the Vikings the want to get into a bidding war with other teams to keep Sam Darnold, even though he's not their quarterback of the future? That seems crazy to me, unless these other teams are not interested in Darnold either and they can bring him back on the cheap. But I don't see that being the possibility when we have so many quarterback-needy teams and Darnold with Matthew Stafford no longer on the board. Darnold is now probably the, I guess, best option when you factor in age and what he did last season. So I don't think that he's going back to Minnesota. If I had to set a betting market on it, I'd probably have it at like the no minus like 185, the yes like plus 160 in that range. Like you think he's going back?
I guess like, you can't handicap like what's in his head. I don't know like what he's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think if he wants the most money, I don't think he's going back to Minnesota. But I think
if he wants to play, maybe too. Like,
well,
is it
so? I have a really strong opinion on this, and I think you guys, because I think we were texting on this in our like You Bet group chain. Wherever Sam Darnold signs, he's starting in week 1.
Okay.
So if he
even if it's in Minnesota and McCarthy looks good.
Well, if you're the Vikings and like J.J. McCarthy is going to start week 1. So and I don't know if like McCarthy is going to be ready because like he had complications with the knee surgery that he had. He had a second surgery, right? So I mean, maybe it's like they don't have like they want to sit McCarthy for another year. I can't imagine that's the case. If you're the Vikings, you're Kwesi and you're Kevin O'Connell, and you want J.J. McCarthy to start this year, and that's your plan, why would you bring Darnold back? Like, to be the back? And if you're Darnold, why would you sign in Minnesota to be the backup? Like Darnold's only signing in Minnesota if he's starting. Like, Darnold's not going somewhere where he has to compete. And so then it just comes down to, for me, is it about the money for Sam Darnold? Because if it's about the money, he's going to go to like the Raiders, and I don't know if he would sign with the Giants because like New York went poorly for him the first time around with the Jets. Is it about the money? Or like if Minnesota wants him and he signs a 2-year deal with Minnesota and he could start and maybe go to the playoffs next year, and Kevin O'Connell's a great coach. So that's my best guess, is that he's back in Minnesota next year and he's Minnesota's starter. But I don't know how confident I feel in that. There's just a lot of unknown. How healthy is J.J. McCarthy? Does Darnold want the money, or does he want to win? I can't answer these questions right now. But I don't think Darnold's signing somewhere to be the backup or to compete. I think wherever he goes, he's starting in week 1.
He's starting. And towards, I want to then get into the head of the Minnesota Vikings of, hey, like, there's a reason why you drafted J.J. McCarthy, and you did it after you signed Sam Darnold last offseason. Like, do you think that you've maxed out on this Sam Darnold roller coaster here of like, hey, like, last year went about as well as it could have possibly gone, or is there another level to this that they think that they can go to? Because like it got down to it, and the biggest games, it was like, whoa, like this doesn't look good. And it's probably unfair to say that because he was awesome against the Packers before they played the Lions. Like that was an awesome game, big game as well, and he played well in that one. But on the road, once they got outside of Minnesota, hey, like you have to beat the Lions at some point. And like they also lost to the Lions earlier that season as well. They got swept by them.
But how about like play okay in one of those?
Yeah, just play
games?
Okay. Which is
and
why
let's call a spade a spade. Like he wasn't just bad. He was like a 0 out of 10 in both of those games, the final 2 games of the season.
Especially that Rams game. That was, I mean, the Rams game was
honestly, I think
especially,
I think it was worse. I think he was worse than the Lions game that he was. I mean, he was terrible in both.
Yeah, it was awful in both, which is why it's like, why would they want to do that and say, hey, let's sign up for this guy to be our starter? Wouldn't they like look at this and say, let's play the, I guess, high upside range, unless the injury has not healed? But to me,
correct.
Like, do you want to commit to? Yeah, and that's the information that at some point maybe we'll find that out like in April, May, or whatever, or ultimately whenever they decide what they want to do. But I just think that if you're the Minnesota Vikings and you're looking for like an insurance option, I feel like you can find some cheaper insurance options. Yes, maybe it's a downgrade at quarterback if you go like a Jimmy Garoppolo route, or you go in the Daniel Jones route, a guy that they did bring in. If like that's obviously like not as great as Sam Darnold, but I mean, think about how we were talking about Sam Darnold this time last year. Nobody thought that he would be that good. I think the infrastructure in Minnesota is more what propped him up than him all of a sudden becoming some really good quarterback.
So here's what I think is really interesting. You bet on this Tuesday. Costos and Femi talking Sam Darnold not getting tagged by the Minnesota Vikings. So I think it's the difference, right? And that's why I think what I think the show does really well, like sports talk and betting talk, and kind of merging them together. Mm-hmm. If I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan, I'm guessing you're going to agree. You, Femi, and you, the person watching or listening, I'm guessing you're going to agree also, unless you're like the biggest Sam Darnold. It's not even like an anti-Sam Darnold thing. But I always look at the NFL and say, can we win the Super Bowl with this quarterback? And my Sam Darnold answer, Femi, would be a wholehearted no.
Yeah.
Like the upside for the Vikings, if Sam Darnold's your quarterback, you're not going to win the Super Bowl. It doesn't mean that they can't win 14 regular season games, go to the playoffs, like win a playoff game maybe next year. I'm not saying that can't happen, just that I don't think the upside is to win a Super Bowl, right? And if I'm a Viking fan, I would much rather, assuming health, have J.J. McCarthy start. Because while McCarthy might be worse than Darnold, he also might be better. Like we pretty much know like what Darnold is at this point. We don't know what McCarthy is. And maybe McCarthy's ultimate upside is to win a Super Bowl. Like he did win a national championship at Michigan. Maybe his upside is to win a Super Bowl. So as a fan, no way do I want Sam Darnold back for the Minnesota Vikings. But if we're talking bets, so right now, like we don't have division prices up yet. We talked this with the NFC West yesterday. We don't have division prices up yet, right? But we know that the Lions and the Packers both have shorter odds to win the NFC than the Vikings do. And the Bears, with Ben Johnson now as the head coach, like an actual real head coach, we think, are right behind Minnesota. Like the Vikings won 14 games last year. Let's say Sam Darnold's back as the quarterback this year. What's the win total for the 2025 Vikings?
It's 9. I think it's probably 9 in that range. Like I don't think it could be like super low.
Well, but like it also can't be super high because the market is telling you that it likes two teams in the division better. And the Bears are right behind them. Ben Johnson's the favorite to be coach of the year. Yeah. So, like, okay, so let's say it's 9. That's 5 less games than they won last year. Okay, so this brings me to my question, right? This is not, would you bet the Vikings to win the Super Bowl? That's not, no. If Sam Darnold's the quarterback. If I told you the Vikings win total's 9, Darnold's the quarterback, Flores is back running the defense, O'Connell's obviously still there running the offense, what do you want to do?
Ooh, I mean, like Green Bay's always going to be steady Eddie. Like LaFleur and Love, they have their thing on lock. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about Detroit than most people are. I think Campbell is a great coach, and great coaches usually evaluate and can find other good assistants. Their win total is
going to be high still, though.
Their win total will be very high. Yes, Detroit's will be really high. Probably. The roster is incredibly talented, and they're going to get Aiden Hutchinson back, the guy who was like going to be the defensive player of the year this year. Chicago has to be better. They can't be worse. I mean, I guess they technically can, but like it's like playing out average outcomes, they can't be worse. I think I would honestly bet an under and hope that worst case I push.
See, okay, that's interesting because I think I'd bet the over.
I think the division's just going to be better. Like with Chicago, Chicago's not going to be like the silly team that we saw last year, which that factors in a lot. And then also Green Bay is going to play well. Like they swept Green Bay last year. Are they going to sweep them again this year? I don't think so. Like I think it's an under.
Year. Is that going to happen this year? I don't see. I think I actually, and this is what makes it fascinating, right? I think I go the other way because while in one breath I'm telling you, if I'm a Vikings fan, I don't want Darnold because he can't win a Super Bowl. Like, not winning a Super Bowl doesn't mean you can't go 9-8 or 10-7 with that coaching staff.
But that's the expectation now, though. And like that's where I struggle with it, because like Darnold was awesome, but the last year the expectation was like 6.5, 7. Now the expectation is 9 with a guy that we saw the last couple of times out. Look how he looked. So like when the expectation is now like you have to be above 500 with this dude, I just like it makes it sound like I like hate Sam Darnold, and he was good last year, but if this is the expectation, I'm not going to be looking to bet it over.